Amen. I'd invite you to take your Bibles and return to the book of Proverbs with me. Proverbs chapter 18. As we're going to pick up here and look at a few verses, I normally try to have about 10 verses ready to preach. I rarely get through quite that many, but that's kind of where our mindset is. And we've got a lot of things in front of us and not opposed to slowing down as the need requires. So we're going to jump right in. Just follow along with me. We're just going to begin by reading verse number 9 and really just begin to draw some thoughts from it. Just get right into the message. So Proverbs chapter 18 and verse number 9, the Bible says, "He also that is slothful in his work is brother to him that is a great waster." And so he's basically beginning to draw this comparison between two types of, I'm going to use the term here, bad people, right? Just kind of set that at the outset. These are both negative character qualities that he's expressing here. And we have two different brothers, right? He's drawing a familial connection between them. He talks about a slothful, maybe a term we would be more accustomed to would be a lazy man, and then a person who is a great waster. And so I think it's important for us to understand the connection between these two individuals, because just the fact that he calls them brother, obviously I don't think he's speaking literally here. I think he's trying to make a point about how these things are connected to each other. And I think that we can all look at the first one, especially somebody that's slothful in work, and we're all astute enough to understand, to appreciate the fact that lazy is bad, right? I think we can all, I think there'd be very little disagreement with that on hardly any level. I think the rub begins to lie, and perhaps this is more of the greater point that he's trying to make, is that people that waste are literally kin to someone that's lazy. And so I think it behooves us to try to draw some comparison out. I'd like to think about, first off, the different types of work that we can be involved in. We have paying work, right? If you have a job, you go somewhere and they give you money in return for stuff. And so I think, first of all, and some of this may make sure I cover it in the order I want to, you can go to work and be lazy. Don't have to do anything. There's always an issue, especially our foremen at work, a lot of times they have 3 or 4 jobs running, and there's always a concern about people where you drive off and people just stand around and start doing nothing. Just stand around, don't do nothing until the foreman shows back up, right? And that can often happen. And it's even maybe more of a danger if you are, the term I would use is kind of self-motivated, in that you don't really necessarily have direct supervision. You just kind of got to do your thing that you're responsible for. Hey, you take our job seriously, right? What do they say? An honest day's work for an honest day's wage, right? And just taking that seriously. But I would also argue that if you go to work and in a sense work hard, but you're wasting your company's resources, that's a negative as well. I know it's very easy if we're not careful, to kind of have the attitude about stick it to the big man, right? And we really, as a Christian, that shouldn't be entering into our vocabulary. That's not the type of attitude that we should have. And you ought to take care of your company's things as if they were your own things, because the reality is when employees don't take care of their company's assets, there is an indirect aspect in which they suffer from that, even on a monetarily. So there's paying work, and you ought not to be lazy when you go to work. You ought to be looking for things to do. You ought to be looking for ways to take initiative and to go out of the way. There's also spiritual work that we do. And maybe to drive this point home, there may be a lot of people that sit in churches who they go to work and they work hard and they're dedicated. They sew up. They take care of their business. They'll go whenever they're asked. They'll do whatever asked of them, but you can't get them out to outreach on a Saturday. I'm all for being a hard worker at work, but we ought to give a little bit of attention to spiritual things as well. That's maybe a very noticeable thing, but I would argue you ought to put some work in your own spiritual life at times and trying to edify yourself. And then there's personal work, just things that you're doing for yourself. You ought to take pride around stuff that you do around your house and the way that you operate in your own thing. What kind of jobs can we do? Slothful in his work, brother to him that is a great waster. You just do a bad job. You can just not perform like you ought to. You can have an unfinished job to where you just don't ever finish anything. I'm bad about that. I just acknowledging it right. I know people are probably thinking it right. But, there's no great honor to never finishing a project, right? And not ever getting anything done. It's there's a wasting aspect, a lazy aspect to that, a partial job, a half-hearted job, a last-minute job, right? And what he's saying is the person that wastes is similar to the person that's lazy. And it's easy to identify a lazy person because they're the ones standing around with their hands in their pockets, right? Like just kind of a general, you shouldn't have your hands in your pockets at work, right? I just feel like that's a pretty good idea. And really, so we need to ask ourselves the question, why is the waster like a slothful man? Well, number one, he's wasting what was entrusted to him. Your work is a stewardship. When you're hired for a job, when you have a responsibility that you need to take ownership of in your life, that's something that's been given to you. And if you fritter it away and are not taking honest responsibility of it, you're wasting it. And ultimately, the result is the same as a lazy person. Nothing is getting done. Nothing is being taken care of. Your time that you spend on things. We can waste time if not. We live in a culture and a society that honestly it gives us more free time than almost anybody has ever had in the entire known universe, and we have to be careful not to waste it. It's like, why I'm working my hours at work, I'm even maybe involved in the church, but you still have hours at a time during the week where you're not accomplishing anything worthwhile. And we got to be careful about wasting things that are entrusted to us. You have responsibility, abilities. A slothful man, a waster, may not openly destroy those things, but he lets them decay unused, right? And it's the end result is the same. And I would also further argue that a waster is damaging what other people depend upon. Your family suffers. Rarely is somebody lazy and a waster, and there's not a problem. There's not problems that other people are having to deal with. Nobody is ever lazy to themselves, right? There's always people that are affected otherwise. Your employer suffers, like not necessarily your employee. Your employee suffers if you're a lazy coworker. They talk about at work a lot of times, like, we work 10-hour days, but really the amount of time that anybody works is about 4.5 hours. It's because of permitting and lunches and everything that people figure out to do. And probably a lot of people's job have a lot of kind of downtime built into it. But as a Christian, we should not be looking for every opportunity to sit down. We should be looking for every opportunity to do something for the employer that we're there. Your employer suffers when you're lazy and you waste their resources, you waste their time. Your church suffers if you're lazy. Listen, you don't have to look around. You probably don't have to look around. We got a thin bench, right? Like it's not like, well, I won't. If I don't do it, somebody else can do it. Probably not, actually, right? Everybody has to be taking time, and that means maybe not wasting time, not being lazy in things. And really, you suffer ultimately, right? When you waste what's been given to you, when you waste things. Listen, really, the lesson here is, work hard and take care of your stuff. This is what God is saying. This is where Proverbs comes in handy. The Bible is driving home the point of a good Christian, someone that loves God, that wants to follow the Bible, knows more than what baptism means. Y'all know I'm not trying to demean that at all, but there are practical life areas that a Christian should be plugged into. And I would also argue that being a waster is the same thing as being destructive. Let's go to Proverbs 24. I just want to look at a cross-reference really quick for this. Proverbs chapter 24 and verse number 30. It's one that you'll be familiar with. So I went by the field of the slothful, Proverbs 24:30, and by the vineyard of the man void of understanding. And lo, it was all grown over with thorns, and nettles had covered the face thereof, and the stone wall thereof was broken down. Then I saw and considered it well. I looked upon it and received instruction. Yet a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to sleep, so that thy poverty come as one that traveleth, and thy want as an armed man. The thing about laziness and it kind of turns into wasting things is you don't have to do anything. It's it's literally not an active negative character flaw. It's just not doing anything, and there's negative things associated with it. And really, it's just letting decay win in our life. You know, if you just don't take care of your stuff, decay always wins. Listen, you're going to have to put a roof on your house at some point. You are going to, if you live long enough, right? I did some math. I'm like, okay, so I put a roof on my house at 40, says it's 30 years. If we get 30 years, that puts me at 70. Oh man, I'm gonna have to put another roof on this house. Lord willing, right? Like I'm gonna have to do it. Somebody's gonna put a roof on the house, probably not me. What I'm saying is I know that's out there, right? And you know, a lot of people, it's very easy to just let stuff go and just not take care of things. And it's not like you're actively out there destroying things. What is it? Is it the second law of thermodynamics that everything tends to disorder? Things just break down automatically on their own. You don't have to intentionally do it. You just have to do it. And the end result is you're wasting what God has given to you. And this is where kind of the edge of this verse kind of comes into play. It's mistaking inaction for innocence. A lazy man may say, and even a waster, well, I didn't steal anything, I didn't break it, I didn't burn anything down, I didn't attack anyone, I didn't do anything. But Proverbs says you're wasting things. It's the end result is that things are being wasted that's been put at your disposal. And really the question we have to ask ourselves is, am I lazy? Or am I taking care of what God's given to me? These are questions really in all aspects of our life and just the way that we conduct ourselves that we can be asking. We see that in verses 10 through 12. Look at verses 10 and 12. I want to kind of deal with these together, so we'll read them together. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 10 through 12. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe. The rich man's wealth is his strong city, and as an high wall in his own conceit. Before destruction, the heart of man is haughty, and before honor is humility. So we want to think about for just a few minutes here, what are you counting on to keep you protected? Right? Because we all have our what we think is going to take care of us, right? We all have kind of that fallback, that protection into us. My guess is I look around, I think most of us do probably, or you ought to, right? If you don't, you don't. You know, you ever look at your 401k? Just maybe you're wanting to adjust something. I was talking to somebody just the other day, and I said, every time, I don't look at my 401k that often. I'm so far away, it doesn't really matter. I'm putting money in it, and it is what it is, right? Every once in a while, I get on there. I said, every time I get on, I bump the percentage I've given up 1%. I said, I won't even fill the 1% in my check. I'm just going to bump it up. So I don't get on it very often. So it's not like 10 or 12% a year, right? But, you know, you get on there, and it's easy to look at that and say, this is what's going to protect me when I'm old. Right? That can be the tendency, and I know that all of us, we just read the verse, no, safety is of the Lord. I understand that we all know that, but it's even easy for us as Christians to kind of basically fall into kind of like a worldly mentality and making sure everything is taken care of. And I put money in a 401k, so I'm not arguing to not take care of ourselves. What I'm arguing is understanding where true protection comes from. So look at verse number 10. It says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. I think that there's a few things I want to draw your attention to here. Make sure before we move on. Okay, so it doesn't say the Lord is a strong tower. Again, when I make that point, I'm not making it to the point of the Lord is not a strong tower. I'm simply driving home kind of a nuance of this verse. It says the name of the Lord is a strong tower. So it's not even necessarily the person in this context, but it's just the thought of God provides protection to us. It's the reality of him being real, calling upon the name of the Lord, that brings protection into our life. It says the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it. And you notice this is important. And is safe, right? So it's taking away and it's removing not ambiguity, maybe that is the right word. It's removing we'll go with ambiguity. The ambiguity of this may keep me safe. You ever, what would be an example of it? just trying something to see what it works. Oh, I was driving with a coworker. He's got a truck, and he put it into gear, and we were driving, and he like went from first to second, and like did that. I looked over and I'm like, how long have you been doing that? He's like, man, it just started. He said, I'm going to change the fluid in it, and I said, think we're past the fluid change, buddy, at this point, right? But, it's like, and we've probably all done something starts to, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to try this, and hopefully it'll make it better, right? You ever tried we'll see what happens. I hope this will help. And it's not like trying to cut a corner. It's just like something is kind of, there's a negative trend here, and I'm trying to hold off possibly. And sometimes maybe it works, sometimes it works temporarily. But aren't you glad that you can run to the Lord and you are safe? It's like you never get over there and you say, and you kind of stumble in and you're like, and then you look around and say, well, I'm still not safe here, right? It's removing that qualifier from it. Everybody has a system, right? The whole world, us, the lost, everyone has a system. Look at the differentiation. I don't know if that's, look at the difference that we want to draw here. It says in verse 10, it talks about a tower. And in verse 11, we're kind of going back and forth here. It talks about a strong city. And I think there's at least a concept that I want to pull out from this to illustrate the difference in what we have confidence in versus what the world has confidence in. The word tower, it carries the idea, or it implies the idea of a single kind of structure that's tall, fortified, well-defended. You get there in a time of trouble. You can protect yourself. You can defend yourself, right? And we're speaking metaphorically on some level, right? So it's kind of an individual place. And it talks about the rich man have a city, right? So you would think, well, city's bigger than tower, that's better. But I don't think that, I'm pretty sure that's not what being driven towards right here. But city is more just talking about a system in general. They got a lot of things that try to keep themselves safe. And I would argue, some houses, I don't know what you have to have or how nice your house has to have, like a safe room, right? Place that you can go. I would argue that what's being talked about here is the difference between a safe room and a complete compound, right? And God is saying, hey, you come to where I'm at, and this is where safety, versus trying to protect everything that's going on. I think this is kind of the distinction I'm trying to make. When you have a problem, you should run to the Lord. Right? It's not really a command here. It's more of this is what it talks about. This is what the righteous should do. This is what the righteous do, right? This is what the righteous do. And so when we have emergencies, we run to the Lord. I would argue the wicked think they don't have to run because of their entire system. Like they live in a city that's supposed to be protecting them here. Just having the name of God is our protection. And I would argue that protection, because we're all looking for it, protection is either cover or concealment, right? If you're ever in a gunfight, I know all of us are like always worried about that, right? There's a difference between being behind cover and being behind concealment. Cover will stop a bullet. Concealment just hides you from it. And I would argue the Lord is cover, right? He's going to stop the bad things from happening. The city that the rich have, their riches, their wealth, that's not stopping anything. It may hide a little bit. It may kind of obfuscate and obscure some things, but it's not stopping bad things from happening. And I know that because I look around and people still have bad things happen to them, right? This is not protection from this. And I would also argue that all protection is tested. Right? You're going to have, what you're putting your confidence in will be tested by life here. So it talks about, so the name of the Lord is our strong tower. You run to it. I would argue sometimes you need to run to it, right? Not dwaddle to it, not meander over to it. You ever, I don't know if, I don't think a tsunami can happen in the Gulf of Mexico because there's like no earthquake zone in it. So I don't think that could happen. But I'm looking for it every time I go to the beach, right? And my understanding is that the way you know a tsunami's coming is all the water starts going out, right? Am I the only one that's ever, right? The water starts disappearing. Like, I feel like not even knowing that if I'd never heard of a tsunami and I just stand on the beach and all the water starts disappearing, I'm like, that's bad. Like, I don't, like, where is it going, right? Like, I don't even need a textbook on oceanic systems to know that this is bad. And you know what? If you were ever in a place like that, and you saw all the water, are you just going to stand there and see like and you just kind of like turn around and say, well, I guess we should probably go over here, guys. I don't know about you, but I'm going to start running, right? Now, it may not do any good, but I'm at least going to die tired, right? Like, I'm going to do everything I can to get out of the way. And I'm going to move with, the Bible said you should run, the righteous runneth to it. Righteous people don't meander up to God and say, I kind of got a problem. They run to the Lord. They run to this high tower. Listen, every once in a while, you should find yourself running to God, not just meandering over to him, not just, well, I'll talk to him. I'll hear from him when I get to church, when I get to my Bible read. Every once in a while, you should be running to God. That's where our safety is. What did the rich man have? His wealth. Well, you know, I wouldn't consider myself to be wealthy, and neither would any of y'all if y'all know how much money I had. Like, this is not just a private interpretation of wealth here. But, like, I even feel like I know there's some things that there's no amount of money that would solve, right? Wouldn't matter how much money you had, wealth is not going to do it. And honestly, I'd rather have the Lord as a strong tower to run to than a lot of money in the bank. When it comes down to it, I want the Lord as my strong tower. Really, it's kind of asking the question, what kind of high are you? So, verse number 10, it says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. Now, when I think of a tower, I think of something that is going up, right? Like, I don't know how else to describe it. Like I think of like a cylinder-shaped object going up. That's what I think of, like a lighthouse idea, right? But better. So it says that's one, but then you get to the end of verse number 10 and it says, and is safe. So this word is safe. It comes from, both of those come from one Hebrew word. It carries the idea of kind of to pick up and rescue from danger, to set something on high. It would be, well, I can't try to think of an example. Nothing comes to mind. But it's basically being lifted from a low place that's dangerous and set on a high place. Like if your house ever flooded or whatever, I assume, at least I think, you'd kind of walk around, you see water coming in, and you'd be picking stuff up to get it maybe off the floor, your electronics, or I don't really know what you do. I think you just stand there like, well, this is bad, right? But you understand, you'd be putting it in a safe place, right? You're getting it out of danger. That's what this idea is, setting something up high. Make sure I get that right. Yeah, set on high, lifted out of danger. That's what it's talking about in verse number 10. You get to verse number 11, and it doesn't say you're safe. It says you have a high, and as in high wall in his own conceit. So he doesn't say, I need to be lifted out. He says, I have a high thing to keep things from me. And we all know that doesn't work, right? Things are going to get in over your wall. And I'll just give you a sneak peek as we head to verse number 12. Before destruction, the heart of man is haughty. You know what haughty means? That idea of lifted up, right? And he's saying, this is where the protection that you're basing on comes from. Because we all need to basically have our hand grabbed and being pulled up out of the danger in some times of our life. And the Bible is saying the righteous run to God and he grabs them by the hand and he pulls them up out of the danger. The wicked man, the rich man, I'm mixing the metaphors here, they look around and say, well, I have a high wall, nothing can get to me, even though we know, and ultimately they'll know too, that actually is not going to help them at all. And then you see in verse number 12, before destruction, the heart of man is haughty. So it says, let's tie this back to verse number 11. The rich man's wealth is his strong city. A rich man looks at his money and says, I'm fine, I have a lot of money. And it says, he looks around at his high wall and he says, I'm taken care of. I don't have any concerns in my life. But then verse 12 kind of brings it up, and I think we can tie it directly to the context of the last two verses. Before destruction, the heart of man is haughty. I would argue again, I would explain again that this idea of haughty means lifted up. And he's saying before destruction comes, you feel like you're in a high place. You assume that I'm taken care of. Nothing can get to me, and that's when destruction will come in our life. Listen, when we as righteous people, right, to use the biblical word here, find ourselves thinking nothing can hurt me, the Bible says, before destruction, the heart of man is haughty. You know what this word destruction here means. It means to tear down, to remove, to destroy, to take out, and to decimate something. And he's like, this is what's coming to people who think that they're okay. I think the better argument would be to say, I'm not okay, right? I don't look around at life and say, I'm not worried about anything. I'm worried about a lot of stuff. And I don't mean that like in a fretful way. I'm just saying, if it wasn't the Lord in our life, I'd find a lot of reasons to be worried. I'd find a lot of reasons to have anxiety. I'd be taking antidepressants, right? And there's a sense in which I don't blame anybody for that, right? Because the world's a pretty, but you know what the fact is I don't look around and say, I got this. I look around and say, God's got me. That's the protection that I need in my life. And it says before honor is humility. Really what our focus and our minds and our hearts ought to say, Lord, I need you to take care of me, right? I don't run to you and say, aren't you lucky I showed up? I run to you with a heart that says, God, it's like, grab my hand, get me out of this mess. Get me out of the place that I found myself in. I can't do it on my own. We see verse number 13. Look at verse number 13 with me. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is a folly and shame unto him. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is a folly and a shame unto him. I would just simply say this. I got a few things to say, but I'll start with saying this. Don't let your mouth outrun your information. Don't let your mouth outrun your information. Don't let your opinions outstrip the facts. So here's some rules for the wise person, right? You need to hear the matter. It says, he that answereth a matter before he heareth it. So before you start passing judgment on what you think needs to happen, make sure you know what the problem is, right? Understand the consequence of an answer that may not have all of the facts. See, you can always think, I'm speaking somewhat generally here, it is just a general proverb. You can always think more and talk later, but you can't talk now and undo later. Does that make sense, right? There's a negative aspect to just answering everything. Have you ever been in a conversation? Let's make sure we understand what's being talked about here. Have you ever been in a conversation and guys, I feel like maybe I'm just bad about it. Maybe that's what I'm about to tell you. But I feel like guys can be bad about this. Maybe their wife, their daughter, their child comes and they start to lay out a problem, and I am so good at coming up with solutions. Like, let me tell you exactly what I think you should do. And on occasion, it's been like, they'll start on something. I'll be like, well, what you need to do is this, you need to do that. And they're like, well, let me finish it. And be like, I ain't going to change my mind about nothing. They finish it like, oh, okay, forget everything I just said, right? Like, this is what you act, and right? So that's not a good thing. It's one of those things like, you answer something, and then you find out more information, and this is what you say. Well, that would have been helpful to know. Well, maybe you should have been quiet long enough until you found it. There could be a lot of contributing things to that, but don't let it be your fault. Or it's like, why didn't you tell me that? Like, why didn't you tell? Like, and I tell my wife and girls, my wife has told me on occasion, this is just how we communicate. And she's like, you just have to accept that. Like, and you have to accept I don't like it, right? Like, I don't like. And I'll be like, they'll start in a whole long story, and I'll be like, don't hide the lead. That's what I say. Don't tell me what the point is. I'll listen to the story. Just tell me what the point is up front, right? I want to know what the point is. I asked her how somebody was doing last night, and she started talking about where they were at. And I said, I didn't ask where they were at. I wanted to know how they're doing. Just tell me how they're doing. She says, and I get told, you will listen to the whole story, sir. Right? And so right. But the thing is, we have to in our heart. We need to learn. I need to learn. This is something I can work on here about letting people make sure you get all the information before you start passing judgment. So here's the dangers to guard from: speaking before listening, judging before understanding, reacting before discerning, assuming before verifying, treating partial information as full information. At work, I've talked about this quite a bit. It's no surprise. We do a lot of exploratory. It's kind of the first step of a project. They'll issue a construction package, and they'll basically say, in this area here, we want to know everything that's underground here. And you would be disturbed to know how much is underground that they have no clue it's even there. And so oftentimes, like this kind of the way the package is set up, we'll dig a trench and we'll find a pipe. I'll find a pipe. I'll give them the coordinates for the pipe. And I always know what's going to happen. So like we'll dig like a square, right? And I'll find a pipe right here, and it's like going that direction, but I don't find the pipe over there. And I'm like, the pipe disappeared somewhere between here and there, right? And just because of the way the system's set up, oftentimes we'll just turn it in, and then they'll come back and say, well, we need to know where the pipe is at. Going like, yep, I figured that was coming, right? And so, and because the problem is it's like, well, we know there's a pipe here. We know the pipe didn't come out here, because if it does that, if I find a 10-inch pipe here, I find a 10-inch pipe here, I can draw a line. Like, I know where that pipe is at the whole way, even if I can't see it. But if I have a pipe here and I get to the other side and there's no pipe, well, where did that pipe go? And the problem is that, you know, they design a foundation or they put something in, then we'll find the 10-inch pipe, we'll dig it up, and it's right where a foundation needs to go or something. And so they want to hear all the information before they answer it. I tell people, and that's something we deal with at work. Hey, we dig stuff up. I found a pipe. Let's dig it all up and see what else we find before we go to them. So they have all the information, so we only have to get an answer once here. So which makes sure, I'm just saying, to the best of our ability, get all the information you can before passing judgment. What's a folly? And why is it a folly? Because a good answer depends on knowing what you're answering, right? Making sure you're answering what's actually being asked. A good verdict depends upon evidence. Good counsel depends upon understanding. A good rebuke even depends upon accuracy. Y'all I've seen this somewhere, and it's like we need to make sure that we're not jumping out ahead of things and really making a fool of ourselves. I don't remember where I've seen it, but it's like somebody calls a tech support, and they'll be like, something's not working, and they'll be like, do you see a black cord on it? And they're like, yeah. And they're like, is it plugged in? And you're like, no. So you plug it in. They're like, well, if it's not plugged in, don't plug it in. And so you unplug it. They're like, but if you did plug it in, leave it plugged in. Like, and you go through this whole thing of like everything I do, the next, and it's like, listen to all the instructions, right? Tell what instead of just start doing things, get the information. Says it's a folly and a shame to him. It makes you a fool. It brings that aspect into your life, and ultimately you find yourself being ashamed. The word folly here is really just driving home this point of the moral stupidity of answering without adequate hearing. It's just stupid to do something like that. Shame, it's the disgrace that attaches to a man when his premature answer is exposed. Really what he's saying is when you answer a matter before you hear it, that's dumb, and you'll soon find out why. And he's like, don't act in this way. Don't do this thing. So listen, when somebody's telling you something, you need information, just let them explain it. There's a lot of things that maybe extenuating circumstances. This is a principle that we should all be working on. He that answereth a matter before he heareth it, it is a folly and a shame unto him. Verse number 14. Now, this is a good verse here. Verse number 14. The spirit of a man will sustain his infirmity, but a wounded spirit who can bear? The spirit of a man will sustain his infirmity, but a wounded spirit who can bear? This is the first two things I have in my notes. And the first point, I would say, if you have hope, you can withstand anything. If your spirit's not broken, you can withstand anything. And this is an obvious aspect to what I'm about to say, but once hope is gone, there's literally no hope left, right? Like you remove that aspect from it. And really what this verse is illustrating to us, and we're going to look at a few cross-references on this one right here. What this verse is illustrating, the quality of your spirit matters. What's inside you matters more than your circumstances, more than the pain that you're experiencing, more than your heaviness. Having a good heart will lead to being able to withstand some things. The spirit of a man will sustain his infirmity. I've read a couple of books by Navy SEALs and done not research, but just familiar with kind of their training. And one thing that they kind of seems to be a recurring theme is, you know, people start Navy SEALs training. I think it's like a 25% success rate. I kind of made that number up, but it's low, right? And And they said what's most notable is you'll get guys in there, and they're all football players from high school and from college and weightlifters and just completely built. He said those are the guys that quit first. He says because it's not about muscles when you get into the Navy SEAL. It's not that, don't mess. I'm not saying to mess with the Navy SEAL, but I'm saying that's not what makes you able to complete it. He says really what you're looking for is somebody that has it up in their head, that has a spirit that won't quit, that has a spirit that can't be broken. Because listen, if you're a Division A or Division I football player, and you were the best kid in high school, you were the best kid in middle school, you were the best kid in college, and you came to the military, and you're going to be a Navy SEAL. Your life has been pretty easy. It's not that you're not working and trying to be, but nothing will take the starts out of somebody like doing butterfly kicks in a 50-degree Olsen at 2 o'clock in the morning, right? When you haven't slept. And so we're not looking at somebody that has the muscles. We're looking at somebody that has the spirit. They're looking for a spirit that won't quit. And we ought to want a spirit that won't quit. Listen, life is going to beat you up. We probably all had days that make us want to lay in the Olsen and do butterfly kicks. Put me through, right? Anything is better than what I'm going through, but your spirit matters. It matters more than what you're going through. And you see, he makes that point here. The spirit of a man will sustain his infirmities. If your heart won't quit, then your body won't quit. You say, well, right. I'm not arguing the extent of this. I'm just setting forth a principle in our mind. You say, well, this is hard to go through. This is difficult that I'm facing. And this is everything from emotional to literal physical issues. Listen, you just can't quit in your heart. You can't quit in your spirit. And at the end it says, but a wounded spirit, who can bear? Once your spirit gets hurt, there's not much that can be done for that. I'm not saying there's not spiritual remedies, but I'm just saying at that moment, that's it. The hope is gone right there. This is an oft recurring phrase. I want to look at a few cross references. Go back to Proverbs 14. We're going to jump around just a little bit. Proverbs 14. I think all of these are ones that we've already looked at. And really, as I almost always run cross references on a verse that I'm looking at. You've probably noticed I pretty rarely put very many of them. But as I ran the cross references, I have a handful on this. It's because notice is this is a pretty recurring theme in the book of Proverbs. And I want to illustrate it for you tonight. Proverbs 14:30. The Bible says, a sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy the rottenness of the bones. Remember, all he's doing is he's making the argument here that the type of heart a person has is directly linked to the type of person that they are. The heart can carry or crush the flesh. And this is really the point I want us to get from some of these cross references. Your inner man is not disconnected from your body. Your spirit and your soul, it's directly connected to your body. And your body is, in one sense, is going to bear the fruits of the quality and the state of your spirit. This is another verse you're very familiar with, Proverbs chapter 17 and verse number 22. Proverbs 17, verse number 22. A merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. My guess is most of us are all old enough to have experienced this on some level. Once you're kind of your spiritual, and I use spiritual, not necessarily talking about spirit versus flesh, but just your inside part of you, once it begins to go downhill, there's a negative roller coaster that you begin on. And the Bible's saying you should work on your heart. Be paying attention to your heart. Don't just always saying, it's not just like, trying to pump yourself up. Oh, it's not that bad. I'm not denying the reality. You're saying, listen, your heart makes as much a difference as taking a pill for things sometimes. What is the state of your heart? Merry heart, it says, inward gladness strengthens. Listen, the fact that you're going to heaven when you die to give you inward gladness no matter what you're facing. I'm not trying, we've all got things that we face, but what I'm saying is most of the time, the great difficulty comes from when we're sitting in our chair and just thinking about the bad stuff. Right? That's where it becomes difficult. And we allow ourselves to, if you will, kind of start just The term I would use is romancing the hazard, and that comes from back when I was doing driver's ed training. They said you got to pay attention to what you're looking at, which seems to stand to reason. Because like if you're looking at something off the side of the road, especially for new drivers, your tendency will be to kind of veer over to it, right? That's what you're going to do. And I remember going out of Freeport when I was learning how to drive, and there was a boat sitting like on those little bridges right after you get out of Freeport. There was like a boat sitting in the median, no trailer, no trailer. It's like a boat sitting there, and I was like, and the next thing I know, I was halfway off onto the shoulder, because romancing the hazard. And that's when I say that here, it's like you're just sitting somewhere and you're romancing the hazard. You're just thinking about it. Oh, that's horrible. Anybody got anything horrible in their life? That like if you actually just sat around and thought about it, you'd be depressed. And I'm going to use this phrase even, and rightfully, like you ought to be depressed over that, right? I'm not even denying the depressive aspect of it. What I am saying is we have to be careful about sitting there and romancing the hazard. You can make yourself sad almost any day of the week that you choose to, if that's what you choose to focus on. It says a broken spirit dries the bones, just completely dries. Look at Proverbs 15. Proverbs chapter 15 and verse number 13. It's all close to reiterating the same thing. A merry heart maketh a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken. It says a merry heart maketh a cheerful countenance. This shows the movement from heart sorrow to broken spirit. It says by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken. Listen, we've all had our hearts broken. And I'm not talking about some weird 16-year-old in love for the first time and he broke. That's not what I'm just talking about. Your heart has literally been broken by things. And we should be concerned when that happens. That ought to be something that we detect, that we see, and we be like, this is a dangerous place for me. It's not a place that I'm necessarily in because I did anything wrong. It's just kind of the reality. This is a dangerous place for me. And because the next step in that is after the sorrow of the heart is a broken spirit. And that's just a negative downward trend that we have to, I'm just more than anything right now encouraging us to be cognizant of. That this is important, the way that we respond to these. A merry heart maketh a cheerful countenance. I want my heart to be merry. I don't want it to be oblivious, but I want my heart to be merry. Look at Proverbs chapter 12 and verse number 25. Yeah. There's a few things we can take away from here. Proverbs 12:25. Heaviness in the heart of man maketh it stoop. I'll reiterate this here. We're looking at cross references to drive this point home here tonight. Our heart stoops over things. And again, legitimate things that bring that heaviness to us. And it says, but a good word maketh it glad. I would probably, if I was going to give an exhortation here, our desire ought to be giving good word to people that are around us. Does that make sense? Listen, because we all have things. We have bad days. There are, my guess is I look around and probably, maybe you have it marked on the calendar, you don't. We all have anniversaries of things we'd rather not think about. Have anniversaries of things that are negative, that are dark spots of our life. And listen, if you know somebody's having one of those days, the right words, right? The right reaching out and letting somebody know that you're thinking about them. You know, it's not that I've never once has anybody said anything about stuff like that to me. And I'll be like, oh, now it's all better, right? Like I'm not even intimating that that's really the goal, but it's the times that it's happened. It's been nice to know somebody was concerned and somebody was thinking about it. It's just a good word maketh it glad. I want my heart to be glad. Look at Proverbs chapter 14. Again, a lot of these are close together. Proverbs chapter 14 and verse number 10. The heart knoweth his own bitterness, and a stranger doth not intermeddle with his joy. I'm really just speaking to this point that we all carry burdens that even people that may be relatively close to us cannot fully measure. No doubt people have come to church. Probably all of us have come to church with a smile on our face and our hearts were sad. For, again, legitimate reasons. I'm not even arguing that none of this is legitimate. What I'm saying is that we need to be aware of it. We need to be cognizant of it. We should even really be concerned of it. And in Proverbs 14:13, just a few verses later, says, even in laughter the heart is sorrowful, right? And it's easy to put, I'm not talking about just putting on a fake front of everything is fine. I'm talking about being aware of the heart issues that are around us in this area. And then go to Proverbs chapter 16, just a couple of more verses. We'll be pretty much wrapped up. Proverbs chapter 16 and verse number 24. Again, more of an exhortation, but it still is capturing that idea. Pleasant words are as an honeycomb, sweet to the soul, and it's health to the bones. We all want health to the bones. It says pleasant words are as in honeycomb. I mean, I don't even think, even if you don't like honey, I don't know why you wouldn't like honey. I feel like honey's good, right? I know somebody doesn't like it, I think, and yeah, Lisa doesn't like it. So, but whenever I think of this idea of like a honeycomb, I mean, I feel, growing up, I feel like I saw a commercial with Honey Nut Cheerios, and it was like cartoon, but it's like, had like the little, I don't even know what the thing is. It's like a little ball on the end with the lines in it, and they would like dip it into honey. It would drop off. I don't know what that's called or whatever, but I just remember the honey dropping off of that on a Honey Nut. And I'm like, oh, that's nice. Like I approve of that, right? Every time I think about it, it makes me just want honey, and I'm not really like a big fan of it. But my guess is, pleasant words are as in honeycomb. We can all probably kind of conjure up. It's just a good picture he's painting here. And I would, again, the exhortation here is that ought to be our desire, to give those pleasant words to people. And we can do that. It says they're sweet to the soul and health to the bones. And really what that's saying is bones, there may be a slight metaphorical aspect to it, but he's saying, listen, the words you use can impact the inside of somebody, can have that impact. And then one more verse, Proverbs 15, maybe on your same page, Proverbs 15:30. The light of the eyes rejoiceth the heart, and a good report maketh the bones fat. Really, it's really just saying the external stimuli in your life affect who you are on the inside. So when we go back over to our text in chapter 18, and it says, the spirit of a man will sustain his infirmity, but a wounded spirit who can bear? I would just simply encourage us to be aware when our spirit is suffering. Legitimately so, and say, I can't allow myself to stay here. And this really isn't a how-to of how to get out of that spot, but really what it's a how-to of, listen, this is important to my life, because if I allow my spirit to be broken and stay broken, who can bear it at that point? Everything becomes even worse. I appreciate your attention.